You know you have to pay for things that you buy, like movie tickets or a new t-shirt or concerts. Well, governments have to pay the money they owe too. The British government had to find ways to raise money it had spent on the French and Indian War. Winning the French and Indian War cost Britain a great deal of money. Britain had paid for thousands of soldiers to fight in North America. Britain also paid to keep soldiers in the Ohio River Valley to protect the land it had won from the French. King George III and the British Parliament, or government, decided that American colonists should help pay for the cost of the war. Britain decided it would raise the money it needed by collecting taxes. A tax is the money people pay to their government in return for services. Britain usually taxed goods that colonists imported. This means they were brought from outside the colonies. For example, if a colonist bought cloth that was imported or brought in from England, some of the money went back to the British government in the form of a tax. In 1764, Britain created a new tax with a law called the Sugar Act. This act taxed not only sugar, but many other imported goods or goods brought into the colonies, such as coffee and cloth. Some merchants, or people selling goods, avoided paying the tax by smuggling, which means to import goods illegally. Merchants secretly brought the goods into the colonies so British officials could not tax them. In 1765, Parliament, or the British government, created another tax. This tax is called the Stamp Act. This act taxed anything printed on paper. Colonists were upset by the new taxes because they could not take part in passing tax laws. Many believed that their local elected representatives, not Parliament, should pass tax laws for the colonies. American colonists had no representatives in the British Parliament, but did have representatives in their local governments. Patrick Henry, a member of Virginia's House of Burgesses, made an angry speech against the Stamp Act. He said Britain was using its power unfairly. People all over the colonies heard about his speech, and many agreed with him. Across the colonies, groups formed and called themselves the Sons of Liberty. Liberty means freedom from being controlled by another government. Samuel Adams was an important leader of the Sons of Liberty in Boston. Adams and the Sons of Liberty organized protests against the Stamp Act. A protest is an event at which people complain about an issue. Sometimes the Sons of Liberty and other groups used violence to resist the Stamp Act. Colonists wrecked the homes of a few British officials and beat up tax collectors. In October 1765, 9 colonies sent representatives to a meeting in New York City called the Stamp Act Congress. This Congress decided that only the colonial governments could tax the colonists. Merchants in large port cities such as New York and Philadelphia agreed to hold a boycott of British goods. In a boycott, a group of people refuses to buy, sell, or use certain items. Colonists stopped buying British cloth and other goods. The boycott was a way of hurting British trade. The merchants hoped that the boycott would force the British government to cancel the Stamp Act. The boycotts and protests worked. In 1766, Parliament agreed to repeal or to cancel the Stamp Act. Although the British government repealed or canceled the Stamp Act, it still needed money. In 1767, Parliament created new taxes to pay for the services of British governors and soldiers in the colonies. The new taxes, called the Townshend Acts, put a tax on the tea, glass, lead, paints, and paper that the colonies imported. Colonists were just as angry about the Townshend Acts as they had been about the Stamp Acts. Colonists in Boston threatened to use violence against British tax officials. After an angry mob injured several people, the British government sent soldiers to protect its tax officials. Many people in Boston did not want British soldiers in their city. In response to the Townshend Acts, colonists held a boycott of the British goods they bought the most. Instead of importing British goods, such as cloth, the colonists made their own. Organizations of women known as the Daughters of Liberty wove their own cloth and used it to make clothes. These women did chores early in the morning, gathered to weave all day, and then returned home to do more chores. Because of their hard work, colonists just did not have to buy as much British cloth. During the boycotts, British merchants lost money. Parliament decided to remove the taxes from glass, lead, paints, and paper. The tax on tea remained. Parliament wanted to show that it still had power to tax in the colonies. Colonists felt that Britain should not even tax tea unless the colonies had representatives in Parliament. Although most of the taxes had been repealed or taken away, anger toward the British government continued to grow.